So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker today. We're very excited to have her, Pat Andrews. She is a self-described change agent and advocate for vulnerable youth and families. She's had a master's degree in social work from WVU since 2003, and she's a licensed independent clinical social worker, currently serving children and youth with serious emotional difficulties through the WV West Virginia CSED program, as well as in her private practice at a Brighter Tomorrow Christian Counseling Center in Martinsburg. She completed a postgraduate program in trauma treatment for children and adolescents at the University of Maryland in Baltimore in 2010, and has gone on to become a certified trauma treatment specialist for individuals as well as families. She recognizes that unresolved trauma is often the headwaters of substance use disorders and is dedicated to a trauma-informed care approach within all her work. In her private life, she enjoys home improvement, camping, and grandparenting with her partner of 38 years. She has 2 grown sons, 2 precious daughters in love, 8 grandchildren, and 1 giant dog, an English Mastiff named Barnabas. Very cool. All right, so thank you for joining us, Pat, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. And thank all of you for joining. I'm glad to see that there is such a large group that are interested in this topic. I've worked with adolescents primarily for 30 years last year. My very first job at a Boys Town group home was in 1992. I began that position, and so last year was 30 years working with adolescents. And most of my work, most of that 30 years, has been done in residential treatment settings. And very often, youth that came into those programs were struggling or had struggled with substance use disorders. That was part of their story. And part of our purpose in the programs that I've been a part of was to help them overcome and to be able to, for most of the years most of those 30 years, the goal of treatment around substance use disorders in adolescents was abstinence. Oh my gosh, they're using drugs. They've got to quit. And we've got to, honestly, most of those years, the language was, the thought was, we've got to make them quit. That's got to happen, and it's got to happen now. It's so dangerous. It's so risky. And so there was this mad rush to abstinence that really characterized substance use disorder treatment for adolescents. And a lot of my career, that was the mindset. And probably now, I guess about 5 years ago, I was introduced to a new model, a new philosophy that really kind of turned my thinking about substance use disorder with adolescents on its head. And I've been involved for the last 5 years in utilizing this new model. It's called the 7 Challenges model, and it is an evidence-based model. Generally, it is utilized in group settings, but I have myself utilized it in individual counseling and have seen it be really successful with some of my colleagues doing individual work using this model. So it's very flexible and very effective. So what I'm going to do today, I have also, I'm what is considered a 7 Challenges leader. I was trained as a facilitator of the model, and then also trained as a leader so that I could train others. And when I train others in this model, it is a 4-day affair. So you're getting just an overview, but I wanted the developer of this program, is passionate and is eager for others to be introduced. Dr. Schweibel, like myself, had been involved in substance use treatment with adolescents in the old school, and developed this program and went through all the hoops so that it could be considered an evidence-based program, and is eager for others to understand this new way of thinking about this counseling model. And so is great with any opportunity that we can have to kind of shout it out. So that's what this is today, kind of a shout out, an introduction of a new way of thinking and doing counseling with youth with substance use disorders that meet some of those challenges that we have. And so I've talked a little bit about some of the challenges already, but I think I want to specify a couple of the challenges that I've seen. I saw someone who is on here from a police department. So we have law enforcement, we have counselors, we have social workers, case managers on this call. And my guess is that many of you work with adolescents who, in their struggles with substance use, if they've come to your attention, they are now being mandated to some kind of abstinence. They are involved with the legal system or in trouble at school. And so they've come to you, they've been referred to you. And with kind of the mandate, now fix them. And my guess is most of your clients come with a lot of resistance, with a lot of denial. I ain't got no problem. Or I'm not talking to you. I don't need this. So it's rarely, that's one of the challenges. It's rarely voluntary that youth come to substance use disorder counseling on their own. Or another challenge is they even realize that there is a problem. And so 7 Challenges addresses that primary barrier to effective counseling. We all know that the best counseling happens when it's voluntary, when they want that. So I'm going to dive right in and begin to talk about the program. And as Mary said, I know you're going to have a lot of questions, but I will ask that you save them to the end, and I will try to answer as many as possible. And honestly, I'm fine. I don't know if this is something that can be done, but if they want to share my email, or I can share my email in the chat. And if you have other questions later on, I'd be glad to answer those outside of this format, because we all care about the young people that we serve, and we want to be as effective as we can be in serving them in whatever role that you play in their lives. And so anything that I can do to that end, I want to do that. Oh, great. Thank you, Sarah. So the 7 Challenges program is designed for adolescents and young adults, but in that range of development, and who have a substance use disorder. I will say that I have utilized the program for young people who have had substance use but don't meet the criteria for a diagnosis. And especially when I'm doing one-on-one individual, that's effective. When it's in the group model, generally admission into the group requires a diagnosis. is to motivate decisions and commitment to change. You notice I didn't say commitment and decision for abstinence. It's to change. And then once that decision is made, once that commitment is made, then the program guides young people towards success in implementing their decisions. And instead of that mad rush to abstinence and that being your starting point of we're all going to quit, you start where the youth is at, and in those stages of change. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's important that we, for successful engagement around any issue in the counseling process, that we start where the client is, not with our own mandates. In any other treatment modality, do we start with our own goals and objectives? In all counseling training, we're all trained that the client has autonomy in deciding what their goals are and how they're going to work towards those goals. But in traditional substance use disorder treatment for adolescents, I know when I first started working in a residential program with a substance use disorder curriculum, the objectives, the goals and objectives were a template. Everybody had the same goals and objectives, and the goal was that they would have 6 months without use of mood altering substances, abstinence. But we want this new way of thinking is that we start where they are. And the first thing, just like with counseling and any other problem, is trust and relationship comes first. We build rapport. That's a foundation. Trust and relationship. We're not probation officers. We're not law enforcement. We're counselors. And when you're counseling youth with substance use disorders, like anything else, that foundation has to be trust and relationship. That has to come first. And most youth are going to expect that their counselors will try to make them quit using drugs. They expect that. So when that's not the first thing you're talking about, that's not the main thing you're talking about, that's going to put them off a little bit. They're going to be like, what? And that gives you an opening to, hey, we're different. This is different, in order for you to be able to make some different choices, if that's where you're at. So it also, this new way of thinking supports adolescent development, because we know that adolescence is that stage of our life. We are striving for independence. We're striving for autonomy. We are hungry to make our own choices. And sometimes during adolescence, because we haven't matured, we haven't fully developed that part of our brain where we're making good decisions, we're able to weigh the pros and cons, we get into some risky behavior. I'm old, and you can't be in this work for 30 years and not be kind of old. But I can still remember as an adolescent, that pushback for 3 to 5 years, that pushback against authority, that strong desire to make my own choices and decisions. And so we want to get into leave time for the nuts and bolts. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, And again, I'm old, so if I don't get it right the first time, bear with me. I think this is it. Woo, I did it. So this is, if you'd like, this is what you can have. And hopefully I'll figure out how to move it down. We'll see. So 7 challenges. Comprehensive counseling program for co-occurring youth developed by Robert Schwabel, PhD. And if you want to look him up or look up 7 challenges, there's a lot of information out there free. So you can build on this introduction and certainly learn more. It is a benefit versus harm process. It is not an abstinence goal process. It's a benefit versus harm process. So they're looking at their use and they're weighing the benefit versus harm. It comes with materials that are utilized, which include a reader that has stories from real kids, real adolescents in their lives, names changed and all of that. But it also includes a journal. Every week, there's a journal that goes back and forth between the counselor and the client. And the journal asks very specific questions related to each of the challenges that we'll get to. And then every week, so this is a time-intensive process, every week, the counselor is responding and writing individually to those journals. So when they answer a question, then that conversation continues in writing with the counselor. And then they have those journals to keep. It's a learning process that's private and individualized. So the journals are a big part of that. And that's something I hope that you'll take some of this away and realize how you can apply some of the good stuff that's part of the 7 Challenges program to all your work. And honestly, I've used this interactive journaling with youth with a lot of other issues and find it really effective. So I want to introduce the challenges. It's called the 7 Challenges program. And here are the challenges. Challenge 1, we decided to open up and talk honestly about ourselves and about alcohol and other drugs. So the foundation is openness and honesty. And that's why building rapport in the beginning is so important, because you're not going to have that openness. You're not going to have that honesty that's needed for this process if you don't have a good relationship. Challenge 2, we looked at what we liked about alcohol and other drugs and why we're using them. We start right there. Hey, obviously there are positive things about your use of alcohol or drugs, or you wouldn't be doing it. So let's look at, how's it helping you? What are you getting out of it? What are the benefits? And there are a lot of people that are uncomfortable, sometimes parents, sometimes probation officers that may be uncomfortable with this challenge, but we'll talk later about why this challenge is so important. Then challenge 3, we looked at our use of alcohol and other drugs to see if it had caused harm or could cause harm. Let's look at it. At the beginning, a lot of youth will say, no, it's just great. I can remember years ago, I had a young man, he dug his heels in. He was such an advocate for marijuana that he could not see any harm. It was the best thing that ever happened to him. And if we had had the 7 Challenges program, he would not have had to dig his heels in about that, because he would have been given permission to acknowledge what he benefited from, but then gently challenged to see, could maybe possibly there be some harm? Challenge 4, and this I will say is where the most profound work takes place, is right at challenge 4. We looked at our responsibility and the responsibility of others for our problems. This is where in the journals, we're talking about their family. We're asking them about their connections or lack thereof, and the people, other people in their life, and how those relationships are part of their decisions. No man's an island. You didn't just wake up one day and decide, I'm going to use drugs. Let's look at where others have had some responsibility, but let's own our own responsibility. Challenge 5, we thought about where we seemed to be headed, where we wanted to go, and what we wanted to accomplish. And you notice it doesn't specify that this is about drugs. One of the coolest things that really increases engagement in this counseling process is it's not just about drugs. We want them to think about their whole life and what are your goals for your whole life. Challenge 6, we made thoughtful decisions about our lives and about our use of alcohol and other drugs. So we're challenging them not to abstinence, but to make thoughtful decisions. That's a primary goal of this program, is that the youth make thoughtful decisions about their life and their use of alcohol and drugs. And then finally, challenge 7, we follow through on our decisions about our lives and drug use. If we saw problems, we went back to earlier challenges and mastered them. So that's the relapse prevention. They have these challenges that they have accomplished and they can go back. And the insight that they've gained through going through these challenges sticks with them, no matter where they are with their decisions when they finish the program. And one of the messages that we repeat every week when we meet with a youth is that we support all efforts to quit or set new limits with individualized support. We support you wherever you are. And we acknowledge that you are an individual and everything about your use, your journey is your own. And so will your decisions be your own. Now, 7 challenges promotes fully informed decisions. So yes, there's some education in this. It generally, I referred to the 7 challenges reader earlier that is used in groups and individual. In the reader, there are some experiences, some facts that does provide information, but it's from a use perspective and vetted for accuracy, but it's from a use perspective. So we do provide education for the purpose of helping them to make fully informed decisions. And those decisions, as you saw where that challenge lies in the 7 challenges process, is after going through all of this process. We're not asking for an on-the-spot decision. We're not asking for that. And when we're asking for fully informed decisions, when that's our goal, then the counseling work can focus on the success of their own decision. When you're asking for on-the-spot decisions, when you're telling them what their decision is going to be, that foundation for change is weak. How many of us really make changes when someone else is telling us to? My mom, for years, has told me how important it is for me to be organized. Patricia, if you would just put everything in a place and a place for everything, your life would be so much better. And even at 50, I got a teenager still living in that brain, and I'm like, I'm doing just fine how I am. I don't need to be organized like you're organized. And so the foundation for change is weak because I don't own it. I don't own it. Same thing with adolescents. Um, and so our expectations for success when we're telling them this is what you're going to do, oh, it's limited. So when we are asking them for on-the-spot decisions, when we're telling them what their decision needs to be, they're not going to own it. They need to think. They need to own it. And to do that, they've got to put it in the context of their own lives and their own decisions about everything in their life. And then when they make that decision, it's going to be their own. This is not an educational program. It's a counseling program. I remember that curriculum that we used years ago. It was primarily an educational program. We were teaching them why drugs were bad and how it could hurt you, and this is how you stop. And there wasn't a lot of counseling taking place. In this program, we wrap our process around their issues, what's relevant to them. And it's not linear. We don't go challenge 1, challenge 2, challenge 3. Let me tell you what you need to know. We are constantly bringing all of these challenges to play in the conversations that they bring up. So they can talk about any number of challenges in any session. And we get to the role play, you'll see how that works. Substance use is just one part of their life. In 7 challenges, honestly, you could be in a 7 challenges group, a fly on the wall, or what we call a guest. You could be a guest and you might walk away going, was that a substance abuse group? Because they talked a lot about bullying at school or getting along with their parents, because this model acknowledges that substance use is just a part of their life, and it's very interconnected with all the other parts of their life. And this model allows the youth to be in control a lot of the sessions. They decide what's discussed, they make the choices, and then they draw their own conclusions. And it's a beautiful thing to watch when you're seeing one youth who may be farther along in the process bringing another youth along to insight, and you're sitting back and they're doing all the work. That's effective. They will listen to each other when they won't listen to you. The 6 stages of a working session. So we're getting close to that role play. First stage is initial presentation of an issue. There's actually pre-work to that. There's a check-in. So the check-in process, and I'll lead you through that, actually is designed to bring up issues that the youth have had. So if you're thinking about volunteering, be thinking about an issue in your life this week. And then you go to clarification of an issue. Is this sounding a lot like any other counseling skills that you've used? Clarification of the issue, identification of a session goal. So you clarify and then you bring it down. What are we going to work on today? And then you look at possibilities. You can go in 2 directions. When you identify a session goal, the youth is either deciding, do I want insight or do I want problem solving? They're different things. So that is part of deciding what the goal is. And then you look at possibilities. You do some brainstorming. And again, when you have a group, this is mostly the group that is doing the brainstorming. And then you come to a resolution. You come to some sort of a resolution. What insight have you gained? Has there been anything helpful that you can apply as far as problem solving? And then you have closure. So this is a working session. Now, as part of the possibilities and the resolution, we may bring in a reading, or we may utilize questions from the journal. So we can bring in other resources to this, but it's really mostly them. So who is going to be my volunteer? And then I'll let you unmute yourself. Okay, Sarah, I'm going to leave it up to you to manage that.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing. Okay. Did anybody volunteer? Did I see any hands raised in the chat? Oh, okay. Nobody brave enough. So Sarah, you're it.
I'll play if you need somebody.
Okay.
Oh, it sounds like Pat, it sounds like we got a volunteer. Is that Connie? Stephanie?
It's Laura.
Maybe Laura. Yeah.
Laura,
See,
okay.
Connie's, it shows Connie trying to connect to audio on my end. So she may
Okay.
have been trying.
So Laura Simmons, are you my volunteer?
Yes. Sorry, I was closing my door.
Okay. Okay, Laura, you're going to, just to set the stage, you're going to be our youth, okay?
Okay.
Who has a substance use disorder. And honestly, I don't really need to know what. And we're seeing each other in individual sessions, okay?
Okay.
So you just came in, and I'm assuming that this is not your first session. So you're going to be used to this model. And so as I ask the questions, you just respond what comes to the top of your head. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I need to stop sharing, don't I? For everybody to see. Laura, how would that work? Should I stop sharing?
Yeah, if you click, there's that green button. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Okay. So, Laura, great to see you again. Thanks for coming back. We're gonna launch right into our check-in. So, Laura, on a scale of 1 to 10, tell me, where are you at today? 1, remember, is the worst week of your life. 10 is, oh my gosh, Miss Pat, you're not believe what a great week I had. So where are you at, Laura?
4.
A 4?
Yeah.
What makes you a 4, Laura?
Dealing with everybody at school and with court.
Oh, had court this week. I remember that. So can we dig into that a little bit? What happened at court to make it a 4? What happened at school? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Everybody's just picking on me.
That's a struggle. That's a struggle. And what about court? What happened with court?
Oh, they just listen to my PO. They don't listen to me.
You felt like you didn't have a voice. That's tough. That's tough. And you've been there before. And I know we talked last week, you were expecting that's how it would go again. So you weren't disappointed, unfortunately, but that's still tough. So Laura, tell me, what would you like to work on today? What would you like to bring to our work? You've got trouble with your peers at school. You've got trouble with your PO. What do you want to work on?
I'd like to get rid of the PO.
Okay, that's a good one. You'd like to get rid of the PO. Now, the way you phrase that, it sounds like you want an action plan. So am I hearing that you want to problem solve this? Or do you want insight?
I don't know if I know what to do, so maybe some insight.
Okay, some insight. Because you don't know what to do with now let's go back. I just want to clarify, Laura, where you're at with your decision making. You know, the three decisions that you can make is that you don't want to change. You want to stay right where you're at with your substance use. You want to make some changes, but you're not ready to quit, or you're ready to quit. Remind me where you're at, Laura.
Make some changes.
Make some changes. Okay. That's what I remembered. I thought that that's where you were at, that you were really contemplating, you know, maybe I need to change some things, but not quite ready to say that you're done. Let me ask you this. When you meet with your PO, do you talk about those changes that you want to make and why?
No, they just tell me what I need to do and what I need to not do.
Right. But let me ask you this. When you meet with him, does he ever kind of open the floor up when you guys are having your one-to-one sessions? And does he say anything like, Laura, what are you doing? Laura, how you doing? Does he ever open the door up for you?
I guess.
Okay. There's your chance. There's your chance. Remember when you and I first met? Your eyes were rolling, your arms were crossed. You were like, whatever. That old B, I'm pretty sure it's what you called me. She don't know nothing about me, and she ain't gonna know nothing about me. But now look at us. You can't wait to come to my office, right? I know your PO, you feel like he's a hard ass. I mean, sometimes he can be, and he hasn't always given you a voice, as you said, but you know what? He doesn't know you, but he could know you. He could know you. So maybe, Laura, when he asks you next time that you meet, how you doing? What's going on? Let him in a little bit. I know that's a whole new way of thinking about your PO. But what do you think of that insight? Like that new way of thinking about a probation officer, that they could be somebody you could engage with?
I mean, I guess it wouldn't hurt to try.
Okay. So when do you meet with him next?
In a week.
Okay. And so let's just, do you mind? You want to do a little role play here?
Sure.
Okay. Hey, Laura, how's it going?
Great.
Great. You didn't look so great in court. What's
Well, that's
up with
because
you?
I get frustrated.
Oh, tell me about that. Bing. There you go. There you go. I can guarantee you, there's no probation officer, Laura, that is in this for the money. I can guarantee you that. So somewhere in their life story, they were having this thought of, you know what? I'd like to make a difference in the lives of kids. Somewhere, I'm betting that was in his mind. Now, he's been frustrated. He's been discouraged, just like other people, and he may have lost some of that passion. But if you open up and let him, and I tell you what, having a relationship, a positive relationship with your PO makes all the difference in that courtroom, all the difference. So sounds like you're gonna give that a try. I can't wait to check in with you about that next week. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks. Thanks so much, Laura. So guys, that is a abbreviated version. And you can imagine in a group setting that is going to last a lot longer, because you will take turns. So if you're doing this in a group, everybody checks in 1 to 10. Everybody has to say, has to present an issue. One of the rules is you got to come ready to work. So everybody needs to bring something to a working session. Now, we won't have time always in a group to do what you just saw with everybody in the group. But generally, honestly, I've never had a fight over it. Generally, during check-in, it becomes obvious who really needs the work. And they will say, oh man, Laura just had court, let her go first. And you take turns doing that check-in, and then you go from there. They're either gaining insight or problem solving. And sometimes it's kind of hard to tell the difference, but it gives them that choice. It gives them a voice, so you can see how effective that can be. So I did promise that I would leave 15 minutes for questions, and I did achieve one of my goals, is just to give you a splash of what this is, and hopefully an introduction that challenges your thinking and gives you hope of a new way of interacting with your clients who have substance use disorder problems, and you can apply some of this. I would say, please get the rest of this document, because what it does that I haven't had time to do is it goes through each challenge and gives you very specific counseling skills to be applied to each of the challenges. And those counseling skills, I can tell you, can be used for whatever challenge. So even if you're working with adolescents, they've got challenges. And a lot of times other compulsive behaviors. I'll be honest, I've utilized this model very similar to what it is for substance use with youth that have issues with other compulsive behaviors, like non-suicidal self-harm, eating disorders, those kinds of things. So I hope this is what your appetite, and that you will do some of your own research. You will get the rest of my notes, and certainly feel free to email me if you have more specific questions. But let me open up the floor now for questions about what we've talked about today. Are there
Question, you can post it in the chat, or you can just jump in. I'm looking to see if there are any questions posted from before.
I have a question.
okay?
So I know it's specifically for adolescents and young adults, but do you think that this model would be effective for adults with substance use disorder as well?
Actually, Dr. Schweibel, just in the during COVID, I suppose in his downtime, he developed a program that is being used with adults that's based on this. So if you go to his website, there is a program with a lot of the same philosophy for adults that's being used for adults. I'm not sure if it's jumped through all the hoops to be an evidence-based model for adults, but that is available. And I'll say this, I see my own counselor, a little self-disclosure, for eating disorders. I've struggled with eating issues since my adolescence. And I taught this to my counselor, and I asked her to use some of the aspects of this for myself. And I find it extremely helpful. She does the check-in, we do the journaling. It's a helpful process for almost any compulsive behavior.
So Pat, there are a couple questions in the chat that folks just posted. One person wanted to know, is the process the same for mandated clients?
It is, and most of my work with 7 Challenges has been mandated because I ran groups in a residential treatment facility in Berkeley County, and most of the youth that were in that group were on probation. And even though our program did not mandate abstinence, their probation mandated abstinence. So yes, often you start with youth that are involved with the legal system and are court ordered.
Another question is, somebody said, I'm learning the invitation to change approach where you accept where the individual coping with substance use is at. What theoretical approach does the 7 Challenges utilize?
I would say, and certainly at its core, motivational interviewing is all throughout. So if you have been trained in motivational interviewing, you're going to, this process is going to come very naturally to you. I'm seeing, how do we get a copy of the handouts for the training? I'm not sure. I'll let Mary answer that one.
Yeah, I just typed an answer in the chat, but I'll say it to everybody too. We will email that out to everybody after the training.
Okay, so I'll email it to you and then you email it to them. Awesome.
So somebody asked if there is an evaluation. I don't know if you mean of the intervention or of the seminar today. We will post a link to the evaluation survey, but
I think what they're asking is, how do we determine fidelity? And it is quite the process. The developers want to be sure that when you're utilizing this, that you're utilizing it as it's meant to do. So only everybody who is trained in 7 Challenges has to be connected with the 7 Challenge leader, who then has to observe that counselor at least once a month in a session, and reviews their journals once a month. They have to submit their journals to make sure that that interaction is what it's supposed to be. And then once a year, our agency goes through a fidelity check where we send in journal samples, we answer questions, and we have a session with one of the founders, which takes about 4 hours, actually 4 hours once a year, to review what they found in our journals, in our sessions, notes. And so, yes, there's a lot of checks and balances, and you have to have supervision, an hour of supervision every other week. And we do that in group, but it can be done individual with your leader. So a lot of checks and balances.
So there's another question in the chat, and I actually thought of a question too, but so how do you measure change over time, and what are your target outcomes besides a reduction in substance use?
How you measure change over time. you notice when, as part of the interaction between Laura and myself in the role play, that I referred to the three choices that she has. Do you want to stay the same? Do you want some change? Or do you want to quit? And that is when they join the group, you check in. Where are you at as your when you first join, when you have a new member or a new client, they spend some time on what we call guest status, where they don't have to come with something to the working session. They're learning, they're getting used to the process. And they're having, even if it's a group, you're having some individual session with the counselor. And as part of that, you do address where are you at and where are you at in these decisions. So part of gauging change is gauging where they are in that process. And also, even if they never choose abstinence, how are they meeting those 7 challenges? And honestly, I can think of 3 brothers that I worked with that the culture of their family was all about substance use. And they got in trouble, and so they ended up on probation, in treatment, and their insight challenge 4 rocked their world. And nobody in their family had ever graduated from high school. And this young man, the year after he finished our program, graduated from high school sober. And so because we talk about all the things in their lives, all the challenges, they were able to not just make a change in their life and their trajectory of their future about substance use, but also about school and education and goals. So no, there's not a before and after evaluation that says, yay, we got it. And I'll be honest, because it takes, honestly, probably about 9 months for a youth to thoughtfully go through all 7 journals, because each challenge has a journal. I haven't seen, maybe in 4 or 5 years, maybe about a dozen that have completed all the journals, and so therefore completed the program. But boy, I've seen a lot of change, a lot of change.
So, no, I'm just looking down. Okay. I had a quick question about training for this. So if folks are interested in doing this type of work, is there a certification or a training program that they have to go through? I know you mentioned supervision.
Like I said, Google 7 challenges, Google Robert Schweibel, and they'll walk you through it. Generally, you are connected with a group or an agency that is, I think it's reasonable for what you get, but it's not something that an individual therapist is going to be able to do on their own. So honestly, the private practice, that group that I'm part of part-time, I would love to see them bring this on board. But it's usually done as part of an agency or a group. And then someone in that group becomes the leader, who's like the clinical supervisor. And then the others are trained as facilitators. So as I said, the training for the facilitator is about 4 days. And then there's an additional couple of days for the leadership training. But then after that, your leader can train new therapists that come in. So say, for example, just say that everyone agrees at some point in the future, in the private practice I'm a part of, that, hey, we want to bring on 7 challenges. We want to make this part of our offerings to the community. Then I probably would become their leader, their clinical supervisor. But then when we expanded and we brought on new therapists, then I could train them. I could do their training and they would join our group. So you're not having to send new therapists somewhere else to be trained in this model. So it's, what's the word I'm trying to use? Where it continues to roll over after you get it started. I can't think of that word.
That train the trainers.
Yeah, it's like train the trainer. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Pat. We are just about out of time, but that was a great presentation on a really, really interesting new modality for substance use treatment for adolescents. And it's great timing because actually the class that I'm teaching, some of them may be on here, are learning about developmental factors in substance use next week. So
Wow,
this is a great
good
addition to
timing.
that.
Well, do your research before that class.
Yes.
And thank you so much for this opportunity. I am passionate about this work because I've seen it be so effective and so life-changing. So I hope that it will inspire others to utilize it as well. So thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to remind everyone that I did post a link to the evaluation survey in the chat. I'll post it one more time, but if you don't get to it today before we close out, we will get the link in the CE certificate email. So take a look for that. And thank you all for joining us, and we'll hope to see you at our next Lunch and Learn, which I believe is next week.